everybody. Welcome to the show. What is this show? It's called The Weekly Spinner Rack. It's a show about comic books, a show about very recent comic books. It's a weekly spinner rack. So we're going to talk about news related to comics. We're going to talk about the actual comics that came out. I'm your host, Chris, by the way. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining me. Folks, we are at like an all-time high for Batman. I'm just going to say it. Like, I'll be reviewing this stuff later. There's probably still too much Batman, but the Batman stuff we are getting is just beyond top tier. We're talking S tier Batman these days. Just incredible. There's some wild news this week. There's some really interesting manga and manga adjacent type comics to talk about. It's going to be a fun one. I did forget one thing. I forgot to create my scrolling banner telling you the news items this week. I'm sorry. So just go with me. I'm sorry that I'm not like previewing what's coming up this week. I'll fix that next week. My bad. Let me give some shout outs to a few people that I'm just seeing here. Hello. There's my sister. Always nice to see you. Wait, AEW. Yeah, AEW is on the back. It's like, I guess the same overall company. And I hear my cat yelling. There's Dave. Dave just put out a new video where he's looking at some manga with Japan Book Hunter, Jim Mafood, Dave Crossland. You might want to check that out. Mike, always nice to see you. By the way, I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but I was just playing with this recently. You sent this to me like a year ago or something, because I collect Donatellos. No, I forgot to put the news banner in. I'm sorry. I'll be lost without the ticker. I think it'll still make sense. Oh, actually, I got this pin from Dave in Japan. It's just Godzilla against a stormy background. I don't know. I love Godzilla. It's going to be a good show. It's going to be a really good show. So, in fact, I don't really have a lot of preamble. I will say I'll talk about it probably more when I'm drawing at the end of the show when we're doing our cool down period. But I know I haven't put out the new comic tropes yet. It is taking me a lot longer than I anticipated. Some of that could be depression hitting me, but I think a lot of it is just that this is super research intensive for getting the images, because I am talking a lot about stuff that's very, very close to being lost media, stuff that just has not been shared a whole lot. It involves a lot of digging, a lot more than I anticipated. So I think it'll be a hell of an episode about Jack Kirby, and it should be up in the next few days, but I'm still working on a comic trope. Sorry about that. Anyway, let me acknowledge this. Time for some sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Well, let's see. Watashi wa totemo amai kohi o tsukurimashita. That means I made a very sweet coffee. So, kohi o namimashou. I think people will like the episode when it finally comes out, but thank you very much, Steve, for the support. I appreciate that much. I sang it. I sang the coffee song. Kohi o nomimashou. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the news of the week.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
All right. Yeah, it's about a very specific aspect of Jack Kirby to answer a question that was just asked. You can say Mountain Dew Baja Blast in Japanese. Let's see. Yama is mountain. I don't know the word for dew. I'd have to look it up. And Baja Blast, I think you just sort of take the actual like English and just say like, Baja Brasto or something like that. I'd have to look up if there's a term for like Mountain Dew specifically, but it would be something probably like Yamano Dew. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Let's see. I showed Robert Venditti all the nice things you said about Ordained. Oh, very cool. Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with that comic. Boratsu? Borastu. Oh, Blast. Yeah, exactly. All right. Yep, I'm representing G Generation X. Why is this taking so long to get going? All right. First piece of news I have is a kind of fun thing. Comics Beat puts together an annual survey of other comics professionals, and they selected their comics industry person of the year. And this year, I think it makes sense. The winner was Marie Javins. She's the editor-in-chief at DC Comics. And I think it would be very easy to make an argument that DC Comics last year had one of their best years creatively. I think that the Absolute line crushed it, but I also think the All In initiative has been very successful. It's been very creator forward. Their events haven't really impacted the readability of their monthly comics. They've got some of the best writers and artists. I think that they've done a really nice job, and that makes sense to me. I get it. And, credit to the people around her, Jim Lee and Annie DePies and Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson. But that does make a lot of sense. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's really, really nice. It's an interesting article to read is basically what I'm saying. Go to Comics Beat because they also talk about all the other people that were nominated and talked about. And there's, little paragraphs about a bunch of interesting people. They gave something that they called the Absolute Man of the Year to Scott Snyder. Sure, he's having a hell of a year. Marketer of the Year went to Adam Freeman. Now, he runs a company called Prana Marketing Solutions, and you have to sort of pay to get this newsletter, but they give actual sales data on what's selling, and there needs to be more transparency in the industry about what actual units are selling. The only time we, the readers, are hearing about it is when it's marketing stuff. Like DC's guess what? We sold 1 million copies of XYZ. Cool, but give me some context. What else is selling? Very strange. Honorable mention was something that they gave to Jim Lee. Sure, shout him out. Writer of the Year, Dennis Camp. I think I got to agree. He had a heck of a year at Marvel, DC, and with creator-owned stuff. Really doing some new stuff. Really, really solid writing. There's some other great writers for sure, but I totally get that Dennis Camp got a lot of votes for something like that. And they gave Hall of Fame award to Jackie Estrada. If you don't know Jackie Estrada, she's helped run Comic-Con since its inception. The San Diego Comic-Con, run by the nonprofit organization Comic-Con International. Very, very impressive. So yeah, anyway, and then there's a bunch of stuff that they talk about, Publisher of the Year, the names that were thrown around included Nick Barucci at Dynamite and Todd McFarlane at Image. There were some really nice names thrown in. Basically, I'm just saying it's worth an article, worth a read of an article. It's not they're handing out trophies per se, like they do at, say, the Eisners or the Harveys, but they're talking about what actual industry pros think. And I think that that's interesting. Oh, this one broke my heart. How many of you out there, first of all, please feel free to respond in both, the live chat and the comments if you're watching this later. But how many of you have been to at least one midnight release at a comic shop? I know I have. It's a lot of fun to just, treat it like, the release of a new album by a superstar or, the new release of a pair of sneakers or something. So it broke my heart to come across this news, but yeah, it's been a bit for me too. Probably the last one I did was, I want to say, Detective Comics 1000, which was a few years back now. They're fun is all I can say. If you have a friendly comic shop and you're going there with the most motivated comic book readers, it's fun. Nope, never done it. It can be a blast. Two people saying that they didn't know it was a thing. It depends on your store. It depends on your store. There's another person that says, I didn't know that comic shops did that. So here, let me explain. Kaboom Comics is in a town called McAllen in Texas. They have somewhat regular midnight releases for big releases. It's an excuse to have a party that starts at 11:30. The community comes. I think they have sales and prizes, maybe some food or beverages. But they were forced to cancel their first one that they planned for 2026. They were going to do a release this past week for the Arc M special. What happened? So Kaboom posted to social media that they were told by distributor Lunar that they're not allowed to sell new releases outside of their posted business hours. So even though it's technically Wednesday, sell it at like 12:01, they said, no, you're only allowed to sell it during what you have as your normal Wednesday hours. You can't do it early. Oh, I've never heard that said or enforced. No word on exactly who would have even reported them. Was it like a snubbed reader at the store? Was it another competitor saying like, hey, you might want to look at this? Because I don't think that, honestly, the distributors or the publishers are going around enforcing that stuff if they don't have to. I think somebody had to have reported them. It is a weird constriction. I don't see, it's like there's nothing that would block a competitor from doing the exact same thing, especially since they have to announce that it's a party. It's not like they're secretly going like, hee, I sold it at 12:01. No, they're saying, hey, party starts at 11:30. At 12:01, we'll sell you the new comic. Well, I understand. See, you're saying that like it's their terms of service. I've never heard that that's part of the terms of service, is what I'm saying. I've never heard of that. That is totally new to me. Kaboom followed up on social media by explaining that while they won't be allowed to sell new releases at midnight, they do still plan on holding parties. They're going to continue to do the social aspect of their, getting their community together, which I think is awesome. They said that they can technically still sell it to you, as in take payment, but you can't leave with the comic until the next day. So, I've just never even heard of this as a rule. I've certainly never heard of it being enforced. It's probably there in the fine print, and somebody got miffed and decided to take it out on this shop. Yeah, I know exactly. Book publishers, distributors, they do midnight releases all the time. It's hype. It's hype for the product. It sounds like a good, positive thing. And I don't know what would stop anybody else from doing it if they're so annoyed. Would you sell a new car outside business hours? I felt bad for them. You see, if the store was open 24 hours, if that was their business, I think that they would be allowed to. I think that would be the sticking point, apparently, which, when you think about it, I think it's absurd. I think it's absurd. That's interesting. 2000 AD digitally releases London Midnight Time weekly. How about that? That's really, really interesting. Yeah, thank you. John says that he managed 2 different comic shops. Midnight release parties were never an issue. So I don't know if the publisher cares now, or if this is more of a distributor thing and like Diamond never cared about it in the past. I sincerely don't know. I was just surprised. Oh yeah, remember like Harry Potter or the new Star Wars movies? Before you could easily buy stuff online, people would line up for this stuff. And I feel like if people are still willing to line up at midnight for a comic book, why enforce it? You think it's weird? I think that it had a lot of hype behind it. I think Absolute Batman has been doing quite well, and that this was a really big issue. But I'll talk about my thoughts on it later. Anyway, just sort of interesting. So if you're a comic book store, just keep in mind that apparently this might get enforced. I'll stick with DC for a little bit. On their website, DC has announced that they are celebrating, and they said Free Comic Book Day. They didn't say Comics Giveaway Day, but they said they're celebrating Free Comic Book Day on May 2nd. They announced their giveaways. Let's see, wouldn't having an event where you post your hours for the event be your posted hours? Again, I have no idea how you'd get, how would they argue that? Anyway. So what do we got? They've got their next level titles. We've got what you see here. I'm very excited for Lobo specifically, but all three of these are probably books that I will give a shot at. And I'm also curious about Etrigan the Demon. DC's early reader graphic novel, Aqua Manatee. They basically built the whole book off of a pun. The fan favorite crossover comic book that they did, DC and Sonic the Hedgehog. I sort of get that. Yep. And they're releasing the first issue for free of The Nice House on the Lake, now with the Vertigo branding, which I have to admit is a pretty darn good comic. I didn't read all of The Nice House by the Sea. I probably will, but I really liked The Nice House on the Lake. It was really, really cool. You love the Sonic crossover? I think it makes sense to put those together. Yeah. So, some interesting books. And it was just interesting to me that DC called it Free Comic Book Day, since obviously it's got two different brandings this year. There's some of the distributors are doing Comic Giveaway Day and some are doing Free Comic Book Day. It's all taking place on the same day. It's the same idea. Oh, that's really cool to hear. I love when people take advantage of their library. I think it's one of just the best things that our taxes pay for. I love using the library. My wife uses the library a lot, and I'm glad. This was a little surprise to me, but The Hollywood Reporter confirmed this week that actor Sebastian Stan has been hired to play Harvey Dent in The Batman 2 by writer-director Matt Reeves. That was really all they had to say, but there's a few things that we actually can imply from this. And I don't think that that's a bad choice, actually. I'm like, wait, he's already played a comic book character. But then I started thinking of some of his outside of the MCU performances and what he looks like. And I go, yeah, Harvey Dent, that's an interesting idea. Nothing has officially mentioned Two-Face yet. I think that that's always a possibility. But maybe it's mostly Harvey Dent or all Harvey Dent in this movie. Though there is a rumor that Scarlett Johansson, who we knew was in the movie, could have been playing Gilda Dent, his wife. I think that seems way more likely now that they've hired Sebastian Stan to play Harvey Dent. And if that's in there, they're not going to hire somebody as big as Scarlett Johansson to just play a wife. She's going to be an important character. Therefore, I will just say that, and not really spoiling the full thing, but in The Long Halloween, pretty acclaimed Batman book, there's a strong implication that Holiday, who is the serial killer that Batman's tracking for a year, targets Gotham's crime families. It may have been, I kind of love that they aren't explicit with it, but it may have been Gilda and or Harvey Dent at different points throughout the year, that there may have been up to 3 killers playing that role. Might have just been one, might have been 3. It's kind of cool how it's resolved, but there's still some stuff that isn't accounted for. That's the part I like the most, I will say, about The Long Halloween, is how it ended. It has a really rock solid final issue. Anyway, if it's adapting The Long Halloween, I think that would also make a certain amount of sense, since it could focus on some of the same elements that were in the first movie, which is the crime families, like the Falcones and the, who's the other big Falcones, and all of a sudden I'm totally blanking on the other big crime family. But Penguin is said to be in it. Riddler has like sort of a one issue almost cameo in the comics, so they could like sort of use him again. Maroney, thank you so much. Scarlett Johansson's actually playing Mr. Freeze. I think a lot of us saw the first movie and thought, hey, they've set up elements where they could kind of easily do something new. Court of Owls. I think that that would be a very easy thing to do in this particular movie series, but definitely a bunch of the characters and the vibe, Two-Face, Gilda Dent, Holiday, could make a lot of sense. Who knows? I will say one surprising thing was this. Variety reported that Barry Keoghan is also expected to return as the Joker. I can only imagine that would be a smaller role. I mean, it was minuscule in the final version of the first movie, but he was in there as the Joker. I don't know if they were doing The Long Halloween. There's not a lot of room for Joker in there. So it would seem to me that would be a pretty small sort of cameo again, but I don't know. I really don't. Good question. I really don't know. Anyway, I ended up being pleasantly surprised with the Batman. At the time, I was like, why are you making a Batman movie that isn't, set in your DC EU and stuff? But it ended up being a really good movie, for just like in and of itself. So, yeah. I don't think that they'll do Hush in the second movie, but they did set up elements for both Hush and Court of Owls in the first one, and neither of those are things we've gotten in the movies before. But they could. Dude, that actress that played Sophia Falcone was, what's her name? Christina Milioti or something like that. She was good. Am I the only one really worried about a supposedly one-off great movie getting a sequel? I understand that trepidation. I wouldn't say I'm nervous. It's like I don't care, because if they botch it, they can just kind of like keep rolling with their DCU, and this doesn't really affect that much. But the first movie was good. A 10-hour Batman movie is a TV show, just to be clear. Good one. You'll get a Hush movie before the comic Hush 2 is finished. So let's talk about the news that was, if you looked up comics this week, God, you got a million articles about this. Oh my God, it was insane. Was I speaking of Nicolas Cage before? I went from one thing that mentioned Nicolas Cage to another, but then I rearranged my news. What was I going to talk about with Nicolas Cage? All right, forget this intro. I'll come back to that. But Nicolas Cage at one point owned this specific comic, and it was stolen from him at one point. But it was sold this week in a private sale, not an auction, for a new record most a comic book has ever sold for, $15 goddamn million. $15 million. Now, is this a piece of American history? I'd say absolutely. On one level, I think it's amazing that a comic book can sell for this. On another level, I'm like, at that point, it sounds like you're getting somebody that's just trying to invest in, like a piece of art or something that they don't really care that much. Yeah, 15 million is now like $4 for people that have that kind of money. Exactly. You either have that and a lot more, or you don't have anything close to it. Anyway, the comic was, if you don't know the history, it was stolen out of Nick Cage's Los Angeles home back in 2000. I remember that news. Was recovered a long time later, 2011. It was found by a man who'd purchased the contents of an old storage locker, and it was in there. I don't know if they ever caught the guy that stole it, to be honest. That part I don't remember. But it was returned to Nicolas Cage. He bought it originally in 96 for $150,000. And I'm like, that makes sense. Action Comics #1 in like a great grade. Okay, $150,000. $150,000 in 96. Cut to, what is it, 30 years later? Yeah, 30 years later, and it's going for 15 million. That's a lot more than inflation. That's crazy. 6 months after it was returned to him, Cage sold it at auction for 2.2 million. I'd still call that pretty darn reasonable. But that's just amazing that from 15 years, in just 15 years, it went from 2.2 to $15 million. Crazy. This beats the previous record for the most expensive comic that was sold just this past November. I didn't think anything was likely to beat it for a very long time. Superman #1 from 1940 in an 8.0, which is an incredible grade. It sold for $9.12 million at auction, where things are going to get boosted. Now, is Action Comics 1 the more important issue? Yes. Is 9.0 better than 8.0? Yes. But I just didn't see that trading hands anytime soon. This is just crazy. The Manhattan-based Metropolis Collectibles / Comic Connect is a company that does stuff like this. They negotiated the sale. Wasn't an auction, but you do need, with this much money, you're going to need somebody in the middle to arrange this sale. Anyway, they arranged it with the comic book owner and the buyer, and they're all anonymous. The buyer and the seller are decided to be anonymous. Of course they did. They're millionaires. They don't want people to know what they have. That would be crazy. CGC keeps a census for important comics, as in how many they're aware of. And CGC is aware of 35 copies existing that are graded of Action Comics #1. There's probably a few more out there that haven't been graded, but probably not a lot at this point. That's the kind of thing that you would grade. There's only 2 in the 9.0 grade. Nothing higher than that. It's amazing that there's even 1 in a 9.0. The average grade is much lower. It's a Golden Age comic. It's like 4.29. That's an interesting question, Chuck. Are they anonymous to each other? Because theoretically they could be, just working with this middleman. Theoretically. Exactly right, Kevin. It's the history that makes it so valuable, as well as the rarity. At the same time, 15 million blows my mind. I can't get over how expensive that is. That is just somebody treating it as a commodity, not an actual thing. Because I don't know. Would you pay $15 million for a piece of art? You'd have to be pretty damn rich to do that. I mean, it's already slabbed, so it's not like you can really read this copy, although there's lots of reprints and digital versions at this point to just read it. I mean, it's a piece of history. It's a little bit of a bummer that at this price point, I feel like it's being taken out of the hands of actual comic book fans. But, what a record. What a record. And hey, Nick Cage made a nice profit on it too. $150,000 that he turned into 2.2 million. That seemed pretty good to me. Probably not. That wouldn't be quite what would count as something called a pedigree. There is such a thing as a pedigree, but they're very rare. Very rare. It's always claimed in the media that there's less than 100 copies left in the world, which to me is hilarious because that's not something that can even remotely be proved. Exactly right. What I think that they are not interpreting correctly, Dave, is what I was trying to explain. CGC has that census. How many have they graded? 35. Super small number, and might indicate its rarity, but certainly does not account for the copies that are out there. There are other copies out there. Of course there are. Of course there are. Hey, it's my buddy Owen Likes Comics. Super late over in England, but let's see. I think the only suitable thing to do would be to give a copy of Action Comics #1 to me for safekeeping. Well, you are just one of the toughest guys I've ever met, so I know that you can keep that safe, Owen. And you're right. I will send you a facsimile copy from 2025 of Action Comics #1 that you can keep a hold of. By the way, folks, Owen just had Grant Morrison on his show. Did an interview with Grant Morrison. So you might want to check out Owen Likes Comics for that, because that's a pretty incredible get. It's not necessarily as rare as an Alan Moore interview, but it is still a pretty big deal. Hey, Jay, haven't seen you on here in a while. Hope things are going well in New York. Anyway, $15 million. Let's talk about something cringe. Do kids still say that, or is the word they use now just generational or 6'7"? I can't keep up. All right, so there's this mangaka, right? His name's Yoichiro Tanabe. And he's drawn manga based on idol groups, as in, girl and boy pop bands from Japan, Korea, stuff like that. But he draws that for magazines. This week, he was forced to apologize to an idol. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Riko Kudo is a member of a group called STU48. I didn't bother to look up if that means anything. Anyway, she posted a photo of her in a dress. Tanabe asked Twitter's AI Grok feature to show her in a bikini, which of course it did, because Grok has apparently no rules. You can just tell it to put anybody in anything and it'll do it. Yikes, fucking yikes. Like the how invasive this is. Fellow band member of STU48, Mai Nakamura, publicly, that's what's going on here, told Tanabe to take it down, that it was not right, that it was gross. To his credit, he did. And then in response, he released a big written statement titled "Regarding My Recent Inappropriate Post." So he offered an apology. It seemed sincere, I will say. He wrote that he deeply regretted causing discomfort. He acknowledged a bunch of his own personal failings in this issue, including a lack of awareness regarding portrait rights. I don't know how you don't know that stuff right now. Insufficient understanding of generative AI usage. Nobody knows what that is. And an arrogant misjudgment of appropriate boundaries with idols that he's worked with professionally. Thank you for the super chat. My students still use cringe, and I tell them everything in high school is cringe. That's true. Maybe they'll understand that when they get older. I teach 9 to 12. That's really true. Here's what I was kind of impressed with on one level. Tanabe further stated that beyond deleting the related posts, he's suspended he just made this choice, I guess himself, to stop his business dealings with the idol group that he was drawing the manga for. So I guess he's going to go quiet for a while. And that was all based on just one quick impulse of just like, Grok, put this lady in a bikini. But that's so rude. And you shouldn't do that no matter what. But if you're a professional that actually works with idol groups, obviously you've got much higher visibility. The fans did not go for it. Yeah. Yeah, I guess at least he apologized, deleted it and stuff. But, anyway, I could completely understand how that would feel very invasive, potentially. If somebody did that to me, first of all, I'm nobody. Honestly, things don't generally offend me on a personal level. Like, I would laugh if somebody like drew me, in a bikini. I'd go, okay, haha, I'm a big fatso, I don't care. But it's a very different vibe if you're trying to maintain a certain image, isn't it? Like the idol groups are supposed to be both like pretty and alluring, but also available and pure. And he's it just wasn't smart. Oh, I like this one. Put Chris riding a dinosaur with Turok in tow and make it look cool. Well, now you're asking it to do more than it can. Now you're asking. Oh, that's my point, that it was a false equivalency. I'm saying it wouldn't. I can't have the same perspective. I was continuing to explain that she has an image. Anyway. Ay. So I'll talk about what I put in the thumbnail. And you guys kind of know, I'm just not a big fan of AI. I think it has some limited uses, could have more uses, but I think it needs limits. And I'm really against it for generating art. But the manga here, My Dear Wife, Will You Be My Lover, was released December 28th, pretty recently. It has quickly reached the top 10 in the young adult category on a site called Comic CMOA, which is Japan's largest ebook platform. Okay. You kind of see where this is going because I set it up, but this is published by Studio Zoom. It's credited to a creator called Mamaya, just one name, but it's made with AI generated imagery. And it's, doesn't try to hide that or anything, but this is the best selling, or not the best selling, but it's in like the top 10 best selling ebooks for a certain category. This is what it looks like. And it's like an individual image. You start to go, oh, well, that looks at first glance, at first blush, like a good image, but it's very repetitive. Critically, it seems to get average at best reviews. It's got like a 3.1 star average. Lots of complaints about too much dialogue, repetitive images, and a lack of backgrounds. A lot of similar shots. AI is not smart enough to do, long distance shots or a bird's eye view shot or a worm's eye view shot, or do interesting things with foreshortening. Do exciting things with motion. AI just can't do that, and I hope it never can. Look at this. This is a lot of dialogue for a comic, and I would say visually, this is actually quite bland. Like the individual, if this was an individual drawing, I'd go, oh, that's good gesture or good proportions. But the composition itself is blah. It's terrible. The comic follows a married couple with kids. They've fallen into a rut. And so the husband vows to himself to court his wife and spice things back up, which I don't think should be hard since she's obviously this gorgeous, busty young thing. That sounds like a real tough challenge there. But yeah, so the imagery is AI, and that you can see why it sells. It's because pretty girl, sex sells, violence sells, sex and violence sell. Just showing you some images of it, but this is really bad storytelling. Just to be clear, that is not varying things up at all. And you don't want to go too far and have confusing imagery where, the camera's zipping all over the place. But, you compare this to what artists like Hayden Sherman or Jesse Lonergan are doing with panel design and shot selection. And it's just terrible. Right. Yeah. It's not quite like when you really start looking at it, you know, the hair or the glasses or an ear, certainly hands, it just keeps changing. It's blech. Oh yeah, just placed right on top. Like because the artist, there's no artist thinking, I'm going to like leave some negative space in this corner for a dialogue balloon. You know, like it can't think like that. So yeah, it just, yeah, it looks like we're all very much on the same page. I think it's just the name, but yeah, I just enjoy the irony of tracing being a no-no for any part of the process, but AI is totally cool. Isn't that friggin' bizarre? Like, we've had so many stories in the news where, you know, just last week, Japan like comes down so hard on tracing, and in the same breath, maybe it's a totally different readership. It really might be. They're okay with AI imagery. I don't have anything else to add. All right, let's talk about this. So, writer Ram V, I like his work quite a bit, as well as two of his frequent artist collaborators, Anand Radhakrishnan and Evan Cagle, signed a huge deal with a new French publisher. I don't think we talk enough about how big bande dessinée is as an industry. Or that I don't, not we, but I don't. But to be fair, you know, there's not always crossover. Anyway, no word on the plot of what this will be, but this was said to be a 6-figure deal. So really big money exchanging hands. This ambitious project is expected to roll out multiple volumes of a graphic novel series over 3 years. So this is a big deal. And Morgan, the publisher, retains worldwide publishing rights. However, nice little thing here, Image is their partner to publish here in North America. So we will be getting this book here, as well as Europe will be getting it. So yeah, just a big deal. Morgan laying out a lot of money. And I'm very curious to hear what the big idea is that it can support multiple graphic novels across 3 years. I don't know. That I looked at all the news pieces and all they talked about was that this is happening. So Ram V on a multi-issue graphic novel. Yes, please. Yeah, we talked about that recently. That's essentially the new version of the publishers of Heavy Metal releasing that as a Kickstarter. Yeah. Really hope Disney doesn't try to sue them for that title. Well, they haven't titled it yet. So I don't quite know what you mean there, Mike. They just have said that this is something that's going to be happening. I wonder if there will be less of these deals with the business getting superhero fatigue. I'm not convinced that there is superhero fatigue, Jay. I really am not. The best-selling comics of the past year in America with really solid numbers were, you know, Batman, just a lot of Batman, Deadpool Batman, Absolute Batman, regular Batman. There's a lot of it still selling. Oh, you thought it said Gravity Fall. Yeah, no, Graffiti's Wall. It's a cool book that I recommend checking out at some point. Anyway, it's by good artwork by Anand. More of an Indian comic, but it's in English, so should read it. Yeah, the manga that sells well, a lot of it can be supernatural, but they're kind of like got superhero characters in it too. So yeah. Oh, cool to see that somebody else has like read that stuff. Nice. Moving forward. Blind bag stuff. So Marvel is very aware that there were damages to their blind bag program. I'm going to read their statement. It's kind of funny how they downplay it, in my opinion. That's not the point of what they're doing, but in my opinion, they downplayed how much damage there was. But the blind bags for Ultimate Endgame #1 had spine damage across the board. They wrote to comic shops to explain what they're going to do to prevent that for their next blind bag, because that was their first one they ever did. Now they'd already announced that they were doing a Daredevil blind bag, which, to be fair, makes a lot more sense thematically. To Daredevil, every comic is a blind bag. Brunson, nice to see you, man. So here's Marvel's statement. We're aware that a portion of last week's Ultimate Endgame #1 True Believers blind bag shipments had imperfections or packing issues. If by a portion you mean at least 80%, then yeah, a portion. Technically true. That's what I mean by I think they downplayed it. Anyway, while we confirmed early shipments and production checks did not have these issues, okay, we are working to implement different packaging alternatives, additional quality checks, and other production changes to ensure March's Daredevil #1 True Believers blind bags do not encounter these issues, especially considering it is published on April Fool's Day. We've been thrilled to see the incredible excitement across the board for Ultimate Endgame and the one-of-a-kind finds in the blind bags. And yeah, they're trying to monitor quality control. Got it. I gotta say, again, I have been scouring social media looking for people saying, I got one of those one-of-a-kind sketches by Peach Momoko or Robert Downey Jr., and I haven't seen anybody show it yet. So I know that there were only a very small amount, but you would think that if you got that, you'd be sharing it and other people would be resharing it. I haven't seen anybody show an original sketch yet. Oh, okay. You have seen a few. Share it with me when you get a chance next time. Share it with me. I'd love to see it. They mention all the artists that are doing covers for this. There's some in there that I think are more exciting to me, I will say. I think Joe Quesada makes sense. I think Dan Panosian's looks incredible. Like that cover he's done for this blind bag program looks amazing. The Daniel Warren Johnson one being in there is kind of cool. Peach Momoko's is good. And then they've got a bunch of other cool artists. But in addition to these variant covers, they said that, again, they will have one-of-a-kind sketch covers by Bill Sienkiewicz. Oh, my God, I'd pay so much for that. Dan Panosian, Mark Bagley, Alex Maleev. He's got a lot of history with the comics, so that's kind of cool. My local comic shop, Funky Town Comic in Syracuse, pulled sketches. Oh, did they really? That's pretty amazing. Someone at my LCS got the Todd Knox sketch cover. That's really, really cool. That's really, really cool. Yeah. You know, I heard another complaint, not like a huge one, but it was a complaint from the Ultimate Endgame blind bags. Some of the variant covers in there were the same as the regular main cover that you could buy off the shelf. And I think that kind of defeats the point of the blind bag. Like, you're supposed to get some sort of variant. It might not be the most rare variant, but it shouldn't be the same one that you can just buy off the shelf. Like, I don't think that they should put the main cover in the blind bags at all. I don't think that should be a thing. That's just my way of thinking about how they do this. You only gamble with your health, not your comics. I've got some stuff signed by Bill Sienkiewicz in person. I don't have any original art, but let me just say, in addition to being an artist that I massively admire, especially because he just does his own thing, one of the kindest people that I have met in comics. So cool and so damned kind. I've had the privilege of talking to him a small handful of times at conventions. He is so nice. He looks you in the eye. You've got his attention. He's not distracted. He's not like looking down at something. And he talks to you like a real person and says kind things. I don't know. I just think he's amazing. One of my favorite people in comics as a person. So don't ever tell me anything bad about him. It would break my heart. I think getting the blank sketch cover is okay. I think that's okay. Yes, he does know who I am, which is very flattering. At some point, when he's got something to promote, I'll probably go back to doing interviews, because he said that he would like to do an interview on my show. And I said that that would mean a lot to me, that I would really be interested in that. So don't have anything specific, but it will happen one day. I'm sure of it. 5 were the generic A cover. So I feel a little bad for artist Mark, help me out here, Mark Brooks. Because, he put a lot of work into his cover, and it's a big deal to be the main cover. And then people were like disappointed to get his cover in the blind bag. And I feel bad for him. Michael A. Von Oming is also way up there. He's very, very kind. Very, very kind. I think this is the last Marvel-ish thing that I've got to talk about, but this past Thursday, Disney, or as I apparently now spell it, Disney, good enough for the girls I go out with, Disney and WEBTOON announced they finalized the deal to create a new digital comics platform for comics together. Okay, we already knew that they were working together, but this is like the next step. The platform is going to be developed and operated by WEBTOON. It expands on Disney's current Marvel Unlimited service. I don't know if they're going to shutter Marvel Unlimited. Something tells me that they'll keep that as their own thing, and that this will be more of a vertical scrolling exclusive site or app, or site and app. But yeah, it is the first time Disney's full comics catalog will be accessible through a single subscription. The two companies previously partnered. This was back in August of 25. They announced that they're going to reformat Marvel Comics into vertical scrolling. And that'll include, the superhero stuff, some original Disney stuff, the Fox Studio stuff like Predator and Alien, etc. Star Wars. They've got a bunch of different brands that they could do this with. But yeah, the new platform will add to that with original comics. So no timeline, but they're going to create. It's not going to be on WEBTOON. It's not going to be on Marvel Unlimited. They're building their own thing. Maybe. Although I think it sort of reminds me of how, we had Netflix as the streaming platform, and that was cool. And then all of a sudden, everybody started making their own streaming platform to compete. There was Disney and HBO and Hulu and ESPN Plus and Apple Plus, and, probably a bunch that we've forgotten already, like, Yahoo. I don't know. Oh, this surprised me a tiny bit. Ryan Stegman was definitely one of the big names Marvel was happy to throw out there and promote for their 2024 relaunch of all the X-Men titles. Lately, Netho Diaz and Tony Daniel have been filling in on the monthly issues. Well, there's a reason for that. Stegman explained that he has moved on from X-Men. He posted something to Substack, his Substack newsletter this week, writing, anywho, first things first, I'm no longer drawing X-Men. Well, that's not entirely true. I'm writing an X-Men annual that Steve Scroce is drawing, and I'm drawing some of that. But then I'm officially done with the X-Men for the foreseeable future. I had a great time working on the title and love the X-Men fans. Sort of. That's interesting. Beyond that, I'm working on 1 billion covers and a secret project that I am very excited about. I will be writing and drawing a thing, and that's all I can say. Yeah, that sort of stuck out to me. I go, oh, he was getting some criticism that he didn't care for, I guess. I don't know what that would have been, but yeah. I think X-Men has way too many crossovers right now that are impacting each title. It killed my interest in it because I was reading the Gail Simone book and I liked it. I thought David Marquez had good artwork. I thought she had good characterization. Reminded me of, like classic 80s Claremont mix of wild action, thematic issues with being part of a minority or an outsider, as well as cool melodrama, soap opera stuff that seemed actually interesting. But it kept getting interrupted with all these like little and big crossovers, and it wasn't for me. He drew the regular, I think it was just plain X-Men, if I'm remembering it right. The one that stars Cyclops. I thought that it was pretty well regarded too. I think Ryan Stegman's one of the better artists that Marvel has been working with. I do wonder at some point if he's going to go back to doing something, if Donny Cates is going to come back to comics. It's been about 4 years since Donny had his car accident, and I know he's still dealing with the brain damage issues, but even if he worked on a slower schedule, I would be very interested. I was really enjoying Venom, Thor, Vanish. Like Donny Cates was doing so much stuff that I really, really liked. And I'd love to see him and Ryan do something together again. I sincerely would. Yeah. Yeah, originally they said that there would be like some less books and that like things were likely to, get at least 15 issues, but then there've been books that sounded on paper to me like really good ideas. What was it? The Weapon X book that had Deadpool and Wolverine and Chamber and Cable. Like I was like, that seems like a no-brainer, but they canceled that like in like 4 issues. I don't know. Combed my hair, had streak of gray like Rogue. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it was at least sort of new and fresh in the 90s when they started doing that. And at the same time, there were only about 4 X-Men titles back then. I mean, there was like, at one point there was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, Wolverine, and I guess usually X-Force, but by then there wasn't Excalibur, so it was usually only like about 5 at most. But now it feels like there's more like 10 because they keep doing individual characters as well. And I get that maybe there's certain characters that will work to support their own book. I've heard good things about Storm. I've heard good things when people talk about that book. They say it's cool. And I'm like, that makes sense. Storm is one of Marvel's best characters that probably does deserve a solo title. But like, how many X books do you need? And do you have to keep doing crossovers? It's so much. I feel like they could develop so much more interesting ideas if they were allowed to go their separate ways. And then like 4 years later, you do a crossover. It would have so much more weight to it. Yeah, and I can understand that I think it would be very frustrating to want to write a serialized story and keep having the pacing interrupted by forced crossovers. It wasn't always. It definitely it extremely is now. This is just one that amused me. So Erik Larsen posted both his script and what you can see here, thumbnails for Spider-Man Noir issue 4. And apparently it was going to have some pretty rowdy ghosts. These red outlines would be his representation for the artist of like ghosts, basically like humping up on people at a club. Not like actually like things that people are aware of, but something Spider-Man could see with these special goggles. And they were just going to be really rowdy, rude, gross ghosts. The script and the thumbs show them grinding on people at a club. Larsen noted it did not make its way to the finished pages unscathed. Specifically, at the end, it just looks like this. They're just sort of like hanging out over people. It's a lot more innocent. But I will say, Erik, Marvel likely toned it down because we're about to have that upcoming Nicolas Cage live action TV show. So yeah, they're not going to go for that right now. It has. It's been a really cool. Dialogue is great. Erik Larsen has definitely gotten very horny with his comics. There's no question about that. Yeah, that's about as extreme as we got. Like a little lick on the ear. And obviously at one point I must have had the news laid out to go from this to the Superman issue sale, because that's why I had written in some sort of a segue with Nicolas Cage that now doesn't make sense. I totally missed that. I write these scripts pretty fast. I mean, I have to. Oh yeah, no, the artist did, but like clearly editorial stepped in and said like, tone that down. Tales from the Pusciverse. Puscifer. I'm sure a bunch of people in this chat know about it. One of the side projects of Tool and Perfect Circles, Maynard James Keenan. Yes, he's got 3 bands. Debuted as a joke on Mr. Show back in the day. The first Ronnie Dobbs sketch. The band Puscifer was singing about Ronnie Dobbs. It became a real band. The band is releasing its first comic book. It is written by Keenan himself. And it centers on a character he plays, Belindia Black. One of the characters that can be seen in the band's Pendulum video. The comic is made to help promote the band's new album, Normal Isn't, and that comes out February 6th. This week, there's a video for their song Impetuous that came out, and it features a motion comics version of a lot of images from this comic, with Keenan himself interviewing his character. He uses art from the comic to do that. Future installments of this anthology series are expected to spotlight other characters that the band has created, like Fanny Gray and the Synth Whisperer. Suggests that it's going to be, an anthology sort of structure that builds out its universe. Anyway, kind of neat, kind of different. Not too many bands promote themselves with comic books, so anything that gets comics in front of people, I'm all for. Some of their songs have been used in TV and movies quite a bit, actually. And yeah, one of them was used, I think, both for the Transformers video game and one of the animated series. I forget which one because I wasn't watching at the time. But yeah, Humbling River was used. Yeah, I kind of like it too. I think that Perfect Circle is my favorite of his bands, but I'm for it. I'm for it. It's creative and different. And I'm very amused that the band debuted as a joke, like a fake band on Mr. Show. And then Keenan was like, I'm going to make it for real. It's going to be another band. Oh, this was fun. I'm almost done with the news, I think. But Nia DaCosta, she's a director. She did an AMA on Reddit this week, promoting, obviously, her new film that's about to come out 28 years later, The Bone Temple. But she talked about comics. Specifically, one user asked, you've directed a Marvel film and now a 28 years later film. I think he's forgetting Candyman, because he then says, or they or she, are there any other movie franchises that you'd love to direct a film for one day? Really interesting answer. Nia answered, I would love to direct a live-action film version of Robert Kirkman's Invincible. The comic and cartoon are amazing. I know exactly how I'd want to translate that world and that amazing father-son relationship to the screen. I also just love the idea of making something in a superhero world that has some real grit and viscera and sex. I'm all for it. Yeah, Hedda's not bad. I like everything she's done personally. Now, Nia's filmed The Marvels. That was her MCU movie. It lost money at the box office. There's no way around it. It lost quite a bit of money. But it also remains the biggest box office for a Black female movie director. That's also a fact. It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, has 79% approval from audiences. I loved it. I've said many times that I think The Marvels is a legit, really good Marvel movie, and I'm surprised that it didn't do as well because I think it's funny and cool. I think it's really funny. I loved what they did with it. I think if it just had a slightly more iconic villain, I think people would have gone. I think that's all it needed. That's all it needed. Yeah, a bunch of you are saying that you also like Marvels, and I like that. I will say also that Nia is quite good, in my opinion, about remaining authentic to the material she's adapting. Because Candyman, which also flew a little under the radar, I'm a nerd for the Candyman franchise. I don't know why. Maybe it's Tony Todd. Maybe it's the fact that the second one was set in New Orleans and I was living there at that time. But I like Candyman. And when she did Candyman with Yahya Abdul-Mateen, an up-and-coming actor, he was so good in that. And it looked like it was going to be just like a reboot, right? And Stealth, it was its own thing. And it was also literally a direct sequel. And I loved how it threaded that needle. Like, it was such an awesome version of Candyman. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, this literally isn't completely redoing it. It's a sequel. Whoa. It was cool. That's an interesting idea. Astro City. Huh. A lot of people saying that they like Candyman. That's cool. Whether we need it or not, it's going to happen. Let's just be realistic. It's going to happen. I'm glad that you like that one too, Dave. I know, like, even though Dave and I are friends, sometimes we have very different opinions on movies and comics. So that's cool that we line up on that one. Anyway, I was just like, yeah, maybe she could do it. This one hurt a little. I don't know if you guys know this YouTuber. I have to admit I didn't before this news article, but YouTuber Riley Moore runs the comic book YouTube channel, The Omnibus Collector. And he revealed that thieves stole about $35,000 worth of his comics collection out of a storage unit just a few weeks before Christmas. First of all, I was amazed at that price, and I had to start like looking at my comics going like, what's my comics collection worth? Because to be fair, I sold the vast majority of my comics collection when I moved across the country about like 14 years ago. Like 30 long boxes. Moore says in his video that he thinks it was a targeted operation where they stole primarily his omnibus collection, that they went there specifically for that they knew, because they only stole a few other personal items that were in there. And they also locked the storage facility back up to make it like not obvious that it had been robbed at first. So he was like, there was so many though, that it must have taken multiple trips. Like they must have been going back and forth, like to steal all of that. Apparently the police have told him that they don't have a lot of confidence that they'll locate the stolen comics because, if you steal graded, slabbed comics, those at least have serial numbers. You can match it up and say like, hey, this was from a stolen collection. You can't do that if it's just a trade paperback, an omnibus or anything like that. So, yeah. It's It's hard to say that I regret it. I mean, I had to move for a job, and that was more important for, like, my family and for, my career. So it was like a necessary sacrifice in a way. So not a regret. It's a little bit of a bummer that I had to get rid of so many good comics, but and I sold them for like $100 a long box. Ultimately, that's all I could get because I had to go fast. Anyway, Moore says that he's accelerating plans to move into a better house that he can keep the comics in more securely than at an off-site storage facility. And he's listed all the stolen omnibuses as well as a P.O. box, and apparently his fans are helping him rebuild the collection, which I think is very kind. I don't think that there's a whole lot that the police could do unless they basically have somebody snitch on it, on whoever did it. It's rough. It's really rough. It included custom X-Force omnibuses. Never heard of that. Yeah, it hurts. I mean, I don't know if he had insurance or not. It might have been Nick Cage going like, well, now that I see how much Action Comics is worth, I think I'm going to get back in the game. I've got this map on the back of one of my paychecks. My sympathies to Riley. That sucks. That sucks. Last piece of news before I have one recommendation, then we'll do reviews. If there's Berserk news, I'm always going to share it. One of my all-time favorite manga. But Mangaka Koji Mori took over from his friend, the late, great Kentaro Miura. Took over his book Berserk, along with the help of Miura's studio of assistants, the artists there, Studio Gaga. But it has been coming out slowly. I think we've only had like 2 volumes in like 4 years. It's been really slow. Anyway, this week, Mori posted to Twitter an update, and he wrote, "This year, I'll be tackling my own serialization and the supervision of Berserk with full effort." So he's prioritizing it over his own comics. As always, I won't be drawing Guts in the main story, rest assured. That said, Guts is really difficult to draw. Mr. Yoshimitsu Kurosaki is truly amazing. That's basically the head guy at Studio Gaga now. The Dark Fantasy, if you don't know it, great book. It follows Guts, who's a warrior in a medieval land. He's just had so many tragic things happen to him. He's got a really dark past, really dark. He's slowly becoming a better person. He's assembled a group of people that he trusts that each have different abilities. He's trying to take down his former, band leader / mentor, Griffith, who has these incredible dark supernatural abilities. He's like a dark god, and he's recently built an incredible kingdom. In the last volume that did come out, Griffith successfully kidnapped Guts' love, Casca, right after she'd recovered memories that she hasn't had access to for years. And he also destroyed Elf Island. He destroyed a whole island of allies. Just an incredibly dangerous villain. I don't agree with either, but I understand where you're coming from saying that. Been meaning to talk to a binder. Oh, yeah, you'd put together all your Way of the Rat comics? Man, Jeff Johnson, really underrated artist. Really, really good. Anyway, Griffith is a great villain. So Miura-sensei hadn't written out what was going to happen for like other people, but he'd always taught. Koji Mori is his best friend. They're both manga creators. They were each other's best friend, and they were sounding boards for each other. And Miura did tell Mori how the whole story would go, and he kept him updated along the way. So, we're at the final act of the whole thing. There probably wouldn't be more than 4 to 5 more volumes tops. So Mori is basically the only one that knows how it will go. I don't know if he's shared that with anyone else since then, but he says that he's not trying to add or remove anything. All he's trying to do is do the best job he can to literally tell the story that his late friend was saying, so that the readers, the fans, can get a partial type of closure. He's always said it's going to be an imperfect, final version, but it's like, what else can you do? What else can you do? It's been coming out slow. For an indie thing that caught my eye that I recommend, I'm a big fan of the artist and writer Corey Lewis, sometimes goes by Ray or The Ray. Sharknife was the first thing I ever read by him. And that's an indie book about a ninja, transforming biomechanical superhero. It's going to get his third story, I should call it. Third story. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. I always do too. Sorry. All right. So, that came out in a weird order. Okay. Writer-artist Corey Lewis has a pre-launch page up. I'll show you the link in a bit. It's a 48-page one-shot this time. If you don't know the story, it's hilarious. Chinese restaurant busboy. His name's Caesar Hallelujah. He eats a magic fortune cookie that allows him to transform into Sharknife, the superhero, to fight monsters. This time, he's going to go up against Steamboat Chili, a pop culture titan originally from the past who has now come from the far future where everything is artificially replicated again and again. You can see where this is going. The original volume came out back in 2005. The second volume came out in 2012, and now a third volume in 2026. I think that this book has awesome art, super funny. So yeah, his username is Coastalvania, but you could also just look up Sharknife on Kickstarter, and you'll find this. There's a picture of what Steamboat Chili looks like. It's absolutely based on the original Mickey Mouse, just to be clear. You did. It's really good. Hopefully this Kickstarter will give you access to some of the other volumes. Hopefully. Yeah, really, really funny stuff. So that was everything I had for news of the week. Why don't I move over this camera and we can pivot at this point to the next segment. You can have me at Steamboat Chili. You forgot. I can understand forgetting about it. It's been a long time since the last volume came out, but it's really funny. It's like satire, but also like American manga action. Corey's a very creative, funny, cool artist. So let's do some reviews. I'm going to pivot over to give myself a moment in time. Let's do some reviews.
Let's review.
Review it.
The review.
The reviews are in. I repeat, the reviews are in.
Go to your reviews.
What? Speaking of bad reviews.
Don't worry about that review.
Let's review all the facts.
All right, gentlemen, let's review.
Before we do, let's review.
Those reviews really came out fast.
Maybe we can review some right now?
I'm not going to review all that again.
Now let's review.
Not my worst review.
Let's review, shall we? To review.
I think I've reviewed about as much as I can.
That is literally like just enough time for me to get ready each time. I know that that's long, but it takes me a minute to set up, and I think you'd rather see that silly montage than deal with me fiddling with cameras. Let me get this out of the way. It wasn't a humongous week for comics for me, but it was big enough. Let me back out just a notch from this. There we go. That's a little better. That said, I did get three comics with Batman, which is a bit much. It's a bit much. Chris plays the fiddle. Sure. Yep. DanDaDan came out. I'll talk about that. So let me start actually with just regular adjectiveless main title Batman. Matt Fraction, Jorge Jimenez. It introduces a new villain, which they've named the Ojo, or the Ojo, I should say. I almost pronounced that the Spanish way, but this is Japanese. It would be pronounced Ojo. An assassin. There's a bunch of assassins going after this therapist doctor that has some new ideas that Bruce Wayne is willing to back with his money. 3 Bat books. Who you think you are, Hank Venture? 3 Bat books. Who you think you are? Who you think you are, Hank Venture? I don't understand that one, Steve. I'm sorry, buddy. Didn't understand that one. Let me say what I like about this, first of all. First of all, the artwork's great. It continues to make Gotham itself a bit of a character by giving us some really detailed city shots here and there. I think that this is another important one, showing Gotham's little Tokyo with a big overpass. It gives us some great action, this time mostly like car action and hand-to-hand fighting with ninjas. Bruce Wayne does not get a chance to turn into Batman. He just has to fight them as himself to protect this doctor who assassins are after. And it does 2 really cool things. One, it makes this love interest very adorable. She's a little dorky, but she's also very pretty in her own way. And that's a fine line between sort of just like turning somebody into like, a sex doll or something and just making them cute. Like, I like this scene where to get away from like the villains, he's just climbing up a ladder, right? And she's hanging on to him and she's like, you really work out that you can do this. And he's like, yeah, I guess I do. I do know that Hank Venture from Venture Brothers loves Batman, but I didn't understand the question. You don't have to keep super chatting. I just didn't understand the question. I'm so sorry. So anyway, I think that this doctor is really like kind of cute and likable. Very interesting as a love interest. I love when Bruce Wayne gets a chance to be just as cool as Batman. He's driving to have like a business meeting with this lady, and they get attacked. And all of his lines are like James Bond. And I've said before that the 1970s Batman comics really turned Bruce Wayne into James Bond. And I considered that a good, cool thing. They're getting chased by ninjas on motorcycles, right? And she's like, why is this happening? And Bruce says, some guys just hate seeing the doctor, I guess. Such a James Bond quip, We don't get to see that sort of cool under pressure, can do anything well version of Bruce Wayne too much. But, he has to like spin his car to like make the ninjas crash, right? He has to do little things like that. He drives his car off of an overpass to get them out of trouble. It's just so cool to see Bruce Wayne get to be like James Bond. She is not his doctor, no. Who do I think I am, Hank Venture? Okay, maybe that's what he meant. I'm sorry. I get that's cool. She's not his doctor. She's a therapist. She's got some new ways to potentially help, some of the damaged people at like Arkham Asylum and stuff like that. And we haven't heard a lot of these ideas yet. What's important now is that it's enough to have gotten the attention of Bruce Wayne to want to invest in her. And it's the excuse for them meeting. But something happens by the end of this that sort of will change their relationship, and I was amused by that. I'm just noticing that like they actually put a bunch of kanji and katakana into Little Tokyo here, and I'm seeing if it makes any sense. And then that might say cafe. And this mocha? I don't know what that means. Anyway, let's see. The panel structure was very creative. Jorge is reinventing himself. I agree that he's pushing himself in some really interesting directions. Like, look at this page has a lot of empty space, but it's very satisfying. And he uses the curve of the overpass to help guide our eye with the action, these little inset panels, but otherwise he's using what I've always called the DeLuca effect, where you have one static background and then the main character, or in this case an object, moving across that static background. So like we don't read this as three separate similar cars in the sky. We read this as the car moving through the air. Look, it's over the top, crazy action, but it is fun. The new villain has a really cool design too. I think that the Ojo looks interesting. We don't learn a whole lot about her yet, except that she can turn into birds. She can turn into a flock of birds. So something maybe supernatural about it. The car has T-tops, I know. Which is part of what made me think that it was intentionally trying to be sort of that 70s version of Batman. I love it, man. It's funny. It's got great action. Here's another great shot where like I feel like the city feels like a real city and not just generic backgrounds of alleys and you know, Art Deco buildings or Art Nouveau buildings, which gets a little old. Moves at a great pace. It's very charming. I find the characters very likable in this. I love the twist at the end, which I'd love to give to you and talk about, but maybe I'll do that next month instead to show the repercussions, and I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't picked it up, regular ass Batman, great book. Great book. It's got some clever writing. It feels fresh. It feels new. I really like it. And I feel like now we're sort of able to compare Batman to absolute Batman, who, you know, is objectively not a rich person, still has his mom, a lot of differences, right? And then you go back and you're like, wow, this, you know, originally was such a 1940s idea of what it would be to be a superhero. You know, you're rich. That's a superpower. And as we go on, we sort of are, the average person is like, well, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire in real life, right? They have different varying degrees of like, can be good and are very, very dangerous. And, you know, I don't want to have them in this world. Somehow this still plays up, I would say, the fantasy of just being generically rich. It just plays it up more as a fantasy as compared to getting into all the dark implications of the obligations you should have if you really wanted to be a hero with these billions, and how you should be able to solve a lot of problems with billions of dollars. You should be able to solve a lot of these problems. And so what they do is, you know, the comics will usually say, like, you know, that Bruce Wayne donates more to charity than like anyone in the world. But functionally, we still have to have crime in the city. Otherwise, he's got nobody to go up against. I don't know. Mahat, it's good to see you. And I'm glad that you would like regular ass Batman. Or apparently, as Mahat came up with, regulate ass Batman, which actually takes on a whole new meaning because regulate is a verb. Regulators, mount up. We're going to regulate that ass. I'm Batman. Let's get regulating. I love the absolute version of Batman as a working class man. Love it. He has access to what he needs when he needs it because he's smart. But it's not easy. It takes work. I'm going to switch over. Look, in fact, I'll just give a super brief look at Knightfight. Fun artwork, fun idea. Bruce Wayne getting to meet Tim Drake if he was all grown up and what kind of a Batman he would be. And the answer is the world's smartest detective. He'd basically be solving locked room mysteries and would almost completely do away with crime in Gotham. He's incredibly successful at it. Okay, I kind of like that. And essentially by meeting Tim and stuff, Bruce breaks this sort of simulation that he's in. He's put into a new world where this time Damian Wayne is a grown-up Batman. And the only thing that's cool that the simulation can't factor in is they have made Damian so smart that he actually knows that he's in a simulation. He knows that he's not real because he's that smart. I love that idea. Really fun artwork, but honestly, kind of light issue. It doesn't necessarily feel that meaningful. It plays with some interesting ideas. If it didn't have as engaging an artist as it does with Dan Mora, this might feel too slight. The art brings it up to an interesting level, but I don't think I can call this, a must-read book. Whereas this one, I'd strongly say this is worth your $4.99. But what I would love to talk about even more is this one-shot, which does work as a one-shot, and it works also very well if you've been reading Absolute Batman, because it gives you background on the villain that's been behind everything thus far. This is horror. It's very well aided by the artwork of, is it Joshua Hickson? I think it's Joshua Hickson is his name. In fact, I'm positive. I'm not going to look for the credit. This is horror through and through. And it's told from the perspective of Amadeus Arkham, the guy that created Arkham Asylum in the Absolute Universe, and his insanely tragic history, which involves he grew up right at the end of the Civil War. This is set in the past. This is set in the 40s originally. And his mother learns that her husband had been killed in the war. And she loses her mind and kills the officer that's giving them the information, and then kills all of her children except Amadeus. At the last minute, she kills herself instead. So this kid is orphaned in the most heartbreakingly bleak way you can imagine. But he rebuilds his life, grows up in an orphanage and decides that he wants to help people not have to deal with the sort of mental health problems that his mother clearly had. And he builds an asylum, and it actually helps people. It makes people better. And he comes across this kid covered in blood in the rain, and he basically adopts this kid, and he's going to raise him as his own. To say any more would be to sort of give away sort of the directions that it goes. It's got some really scary, mentally challenged people in this asylum. And it follows such a great classic structure where the hero literally has to go deep into, the basement, into the dungeon, in this case, the furnace, to confront his ultimate enemy, which is his trauma about a horrible event that happened in the past. And then there's a couple twists to the story. This doesn't have Batman in it. It's about Arkham. It's about Arkham, and it's dark history. But this is a horror issue through and through. I wouldn't really call it too much in the way of a superhero anything, except that it's very explicitly part of the background that Batman has been dealing with, where Arkham is being turned into something called Ark M, as in there are other arcs or containment facilities throughout the world, and they've been labeled A, B, C, D. This is now M. Trust me, the guy that's doing it knows what he's doing. Yep. The artist also did The Deviant with another guy that writes a lot of horror, and a student of Scott Snyder, James Tynion IV. It recontextualizes the main enemy. It came out at just the right time, because last issue of Absolute Batman gave us some background on an enemy, and this builds on that with a different aspect of it. So they work together quite well, but this is a fully self-contained story about Amadeus Arkham and the horrible life that he was forced to live. Great art, really creepy idea, incredibly bleak. This may not be your cup of tea. I like horror. Absolute Batman leans into the horror aspects, and it's part of what helps differentiate it. That's not going to be for everybody, but it also shows how versatile Batman can be. That we can have, we can have action Batman, like action hero Batman. We can have sci-fi detective Batman, and we can have bleak body horror working class horror Batman. And they all feel like Batman. But these are three very different interpretations. I love Absolute Batman these days. Love it. It works for me. It has given me what I want, because I like superheroes, but I also like, something different, and I love horror. And this is so goddamn... The implications of it really scare me. And I would say that in a comic book, it's very hard to surprise a reader like you can with a movie or a TV show. You can build a certain amount of tension with music and with pacing for the editing. You can build up tension, but you aren't going to have the same release. You can turn the page and be surprised by what's on the next page. You can do that, but it's not quite the same impact. So you have to lean into more of what you can do with novels to some degree, which is you get into a character's headspace, you talk through how creepy the implications of something are, or how horrific they are, like how it affects somebody. And you get to actually see that with people's reactions. You still get like the visual punch of that. And I like that. I like the what it can do, taking from both, like cinema and from novels, and it creates this utterly unique hybrid that can do something else. But anyway, loved it. Like I say, if horror isn't your bag, you might not love this. But I loved it. I loved it. It worked for me. It gave me a really creepy story, and it helped build up some of the enemies that Batman's going to have to go up against. I was like, wow, these are dangerous people. But to have Batman at this point in time also have things recently like Dark Patterns, and I've heard Batman and Robin with Chris Samnee is incredible. You'd think it would be too much. But if they're not forced to cross over, if they're just taking this very versatile character and allowing artists and writers to do different things with them and really stretch and push them in interesting directions, it's really cool. And I suspect personally that DC may be willing to do that because they know they are in basically their last 10 years or so before some of this stuff starts entering the public domain. So best to take those big swings at this point. Let's not play it safe anymore. They may not have exclusive access to Batman at a certain point. That will be tough. That will be a tough challenge. But if they can create some amazing stories in that period of time that they can build on in the future, that could help give them the actual stories that they can really keep building on. I agree. Absolute Batman is horror. And in fact, the whole Absolute universe is legit darker than the main DC universe. It isn't that everything is always going to end badly, or that everything needs to be a bleak outlook. It's just that the heroes are more of underdogs than sort of perfect gods. And the villains are truly awful people. Anyway, I'll switch over to another thing that features recontextualizing, because I was saying in this, it recontextualizes a villain. Issue 23, second to last, of Ultimate X-Men by Peach Momoko. And you can tell by reading this that manga, storytelling conventions within manga are more cultural, I would guess, than they are just trying to imitate what has worked before. Because there are lots of manga that will late in the story recontextualize something, and there was like a secret enemy or a secret reason for something happening or secret motivating factor that the hero didn't know about until now. And this changes everything by showing us Amano, who was a character that was in a couple of the earliest issues of the comic, but in the background. And now we go like month by month through the previous issues, showing him fitting in between scenes and giving main characters information and motivations. And we realize that Amano has been shaping the trajectory of these characters for like 2 years. Second to last issue, and we're learning about this character has actually been secretly guiding things. Obviously, this is all out of the imagination of one person who had an idea and a contract for like a 2-year run. So it's not like she's doing a retcon. It isn't a retcon. It's filling in a blank that we didn't really know was a blank. And I feel like a lot of manga does do stuff like this. But Peach has said that she did not grow up reading comics or manga. So my only guess is maybe that's closer to some Japanese storytelling cultural traditions than anything else. That's just a guess. It's very interesting. I think it's fair. I'll say that I didn't think that with only 2 issues left, we'd be meeting such an important character in this way, except to be fair, he was back there in the beginnings, and it fills in why a couple characters may have decided to make certain choices. So if you've been reading it from the beginning, it's fair. It's interesting. It's very interesting. It's a surprise, and how much I like that surprise will actually be dictated by the final issue. Is it going to have a satisfying conclusion? I don't know. I hope so. I'm very excited for Peach's next project, featuring like, a multiverse crossing version of her version of Psylocke with stories by guys like Stan Sakai and Jim Mahfood. Tropes. They are manga tropes. They are manga tropes. He was there all along, but nobody noticed. Issue 23 is a recontextualization, yes, of the entire previous 22 issues. I admire it. I admire it. To be honest, I admire that we're going to go into the final story going like, guess what? There's a little bit more going on than you saw at play. But it fits. And of course it fits, because it's all done by one person. One person had the story and did the art. And so it does fit. I just personally, I think I know that what I want out of a final issue. On one level, I just want to see the main character, Hisako, Armor. I want to see her return to her friends. And I want to see the completion of what I consider the story, not I consider, but like the story circle. As outlined by people like Joseph Campbell and Dan Harmon, the story circle. And you know, seen in stories like, you know, The Odyssey by Homer. The character goes through a bunch of challenges and then ultimately comes back to where they began, but with new knowledge or new ability because of what they went through. And that's what I want to see. I want to see Hisako returned to her friends. That would give me, if not happy, at least satisfying closure. We'll see. We'll see. I really liked it. I did. There's another one that was sort of manga-esque, but like still an American comic, and that's by James Stokoe, Orphan and the Five Beasts. Issue 4 of 5 of this miniseries, Bath of Blood. Wait, I think it's 4 of 5, right? Yeah. This issue read fast. This is almost all a fight scene. So I had a little bit of trouble remembering everything I'd seen in the previous issue because it doesn't bother to recap it. But I think that's fair. And I think that like the action is so damned entertaining. Like, look at this. Somebody getting kicked so hard in the jaw that their eyes are popping out of their skull. And then they go flying into the ceiling and absolutely splatter. This is very over the top. I say manga style, but it's also really like leaning into a lot of Chinese, you know, 60s and 70s martial arts movies that could be very bloody and over the top. So it's a good blend of those two things. Sort of the manga for the energy and the storytelling decisions, but the actual story very much inspired by Hong Kong kung fu, over the top violent exploitation type movies. Also reminds me quite a bit, to be fair, of Fist of the North Star. Fist of the North Star. Really over the top violence where characters have learned techniques that make them basically superhuman. In this one, the main character, Mo, Orphan Mo, uses steel cauldron style to just take, you know, punches that have like splattered other people and it's just bouncing off of her. But that's because she's trained to such a high level. Look, it is just wall-to-wall bloody action, but it is fun. It's really fun. It's earned it too by the previous 3 issues setting up all the story. This is a really fun payoff, and I'm not 100% sure how it's going to hit an even bigger climax than this in the final issue. But for now, I'm enjoying it. Dude, this is so impressive. James does the writing, the drawing, the colors, and the letters. Everything in this is one person's vision. Not tons of comics that get to do absolutely every piece of things. I haven't read it yet. I really would like to read his issue. I have her Nightmare art book. I got mine from Italy. Yeah, I have the Peach Momoko Marvel Nightmare art by Panini. Yeah, it's too close, but Panini. This thing's great. If you like Peach's artwork, this is a really nice book because it shows you her preliminary sketches and then the finished artwork. So it's really cool. And sometimes I almost feel like the sketches are cooler than the final art. Not always, but like they at least show you a really cool primal idea, you know? Yeah. It's a great book. Great book. I do recommend it. It's good. The final thing that I read for comics this week was The latest volume of DanDaDan, which I didn't realize was even out yet. The cover is almost misleading because these two characters, sorry, there we go. These two characters were actually really more introduced in the previous volume and are not really in this issue. And that's just because Yukinobu Tatsu has wanted to show new characters from the book on each cover, not like repeat them too much, but it's a little misleading. But that's okay because it is still what I like best, which is Momo and Okarun working together to solve a problem. And in this case, they're trying to find out, you know, if something is at a police station, a piece of evidence, and they have all these crazy plans to, you know, sneak Turbo Granny in, which doesn't work at all because she's just a jerk and she won't help at all. It's got them trying to come up with a new plan, which involves getting help of an alien friend who now has a part-time job at a convenience store. It's funny. It's legit funny. I think that the artwork is possibly starting to push itself a little more into doing, let me zoom in a little. It's becoming a little more stylized than it used to be. But not in a bad way or anything. Like just like them sneaking up or something like that, or running. It's very stylized in that regard. The assistants on this draw some amazing backgrounds, just amazing. Look, it's got what you need, which is when it has a big action scene, you'll get like a 2-page spread. You know, here's a bunch of hooligans at a high school fighting. That there's so much depth to what's going on there. That's I don't know how Yukinobu laid that out. That is a lot going on there. There's another great one later with this gigantic knight. Hold on, because he gets, look at that. Like he's swinging his sword. I gotta back out a little so you can see what I'm talking about. Look at him like swing his sword through like this castle wreckage, and Momo is just getting tossed through the air. She's actually getting grabbed by a second person there. There's this great scene where a guy with an umbrella forces some energy back through this knight character's arm, and look at like these shock waves as the arm just explodes. Boom, 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 boom. You really feel, you read right to left. So like, it really feels like there's these shock waves of devastation happening there. I really love how there's an implied sense of motion to all of that. So the action's great. What was really surprising in this one is that it, it flat out Jumanjis. The characters, are sucked into what they think initially is a diorama, but it's a game. And there was somebody that's pulled out of it that's been living there for like his whole life. There's no way to like say it other than this is Jumanji. See, like there's this box, right? There's this little box. I'll zoom back in. It's so dynamic. All right. So there's this little box that opens up, and inside there's like these, little forests and a tiny castle and stuff. But when Momo gets touched by the last person that was in there, they swap plate, or if you touch the board, you get pulled right in, and there she is just falling into this world. And in her specific case, she falls into a forest full of candy and donuts and cookies. It's wild. It's really wild. But and then on the sort of pulling back to outside of it, Okarun is realizing that this is a game. Nobody's like realized before. He's like, no, look at how like there's blocks here. He's explaining it. This isn't like literally happening, but he's explaining like, look, there's like game board pieces. That's how you escape. Like you swap positions with whoever's in there if you touch the board, okay? Whoever was in there gets pulled out and you go in. But Okarun is like, no, but there's also probably a way to get out of this by beating this because it's a game. It's not just a diorama. So like this new guy who's a bit of a hooligan and Momo have to team up to go through this weird candy obstacle course to find a jewel that they're looking for. It's great. It's great. The ideas on here are great. Like I say, like, okay, sure. We've seen possibly, depending on who you are, you may have seen one of the Jumanjis. But it's still pretty cool to see it in this context. The art, folks, is some of the best I've seen in manga today. It just is. I think that the main characters are cute and charming. They're expressive without being like too simplified. When there's action or something like that or an important setting, the artists take their time. Like this is like it was important to establish that a character had done a lot of research in a library. So there's just a really beautiful library shot here, you know? I love it. I love the fight with this, gigantic knight who's really just more of just a monster. He's not like a real person or anything like that, but it looks great. Look at him exploding. A lot of detail, but it's not superfluous detail. There was something in here where I was really impressed with how they represented sort of fire and ash and stuff like that. A scene with Momo in the obstacle course where, this is it. There's this giant character, attacking them in this obstacle course. And I was really impressed with like all these textures in the back that sort of represent smoke and then like bits of whiteout or scratched out is more likely scratched out bits that look like little embers and ash floating around. And I looked at it and I go, that took a lot of time. And yet, as much detail as there is, this is supposed to be a very simple cartoon giant, right? So they haven't loaded up the shading all over the arm or something like that, or shown damaged textures all over. Like, there's a lot of empty space too. And I admire just the layout where I go, oh, okay, I can see the main character. I also find DanDaDan funny with some of its simple jokes. So Momo usually runs around in a skirt, right? But there she is in a skirt. But they're going to go across this obstacle course. So the guy is like, look, you should wear my pants. Because he's got tight like underpants underneath. So he's fine. And Momo puts on his pants over her skirt. And she runs around for the rest of the issue with these gigantic puffy pants over her skirt. It's hilarious. It makes her look like she's got this gigantic dumper. I don't know. Look, it's mostly sort of physical humor like that. So how funny you find those ideas of like falling into candy and wearing pants over a skirt and running around. Like, I find that cute and funny. I like DanDaDan a lot, but your mileage may vary. Been a long time, but I seem to remember the mangaka posting roughs and layouts and a couple inking process shots on Twitter in the early period of this book. I will look for that, Mike, because I have not seen that, and I would very much like to see it. I'm a big fan of the artwork in this book. I think that the character design, even though these are simple characters, and you can see a lot of similarities with how cute and simple like this face is to like Momo, but this is a nerdy girl, and she does have a different hairstyle and clothes and stuff, and I think you can tell the characters apart. There's also always these opening pages of every volume that catch you up. If you haven't maybe been reading it in a while or something, you're like, okay, these are the two main characters. Then we get like slightly smaller profiles for these characters, and then 6 more for like some of the more supporting characters that don't really show up in this issue. And then you get like a nice paragraph chunk here just to catch you up. And I like that. I think it's nice because I'm reading this as it comes out. So like getting one of these every 2 months or so, 2 to 3 months. But theoretically, you could fall off and need to come back. And that little page that's catching you up, I think, is very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. Anyway, out of all of these, though, what do I choose for my book of the week that I would recommend? If you have a very limited budget and you're like, Chris, these all seem cool, I don't know what to get. Well, if you can only get one, I would say you'd probably get the most satisfying experience out of the Batman Arkham special, because it's a one-shot, it's a complete story, very, very cool. That would be my recommendation. As far as my personal enjoyment, I might have gotten a little bit more out of DanDaDan, but this is volume 16, and if you haven't read it, I don't know that that's the perfect jumping on point. It's not bad, but I'd read it from the beginning if I was you. And for like just good value for money, like a one shot, I'd recommend Absolute Batman Arkham. I'd just also say, hey, just know going in that it's really bleak horror, really bleak. So how much you enjoy that, you might go, no, I want one of the other things you talked about. And I get it. That's nice to hear. Issue 15 of Wonder Woman and Absolute Batman were also like really, really good. I have to admit, I sort of fell off on what should I ink? I feel like just like, noodling around. I could like finish Vecna. I could finish Predator. I don't know what I should like noodle around on. I'm just gonna noodle around and talk about stuff. Let's see. For a New Year's resolution, I'm learning to draw manga outside of my artistic endeavors. Well, I hope that's satisfying. I haven't seen that show, so I don't have any big thoughts on it. Sorry. Primal. Yeah, I've heard that is by is it Gendy Tartovsky? I think it is. I wish he had been able to do his Popeye movie. That looked really, really cool. The other day I realized I had packed a toothbrush, some toothpaste, and flannel for my face, pajamas, a hairbrush, new shoes, and a case. Sorry. Oh, trash movie contender, Rabid Grannies. Really? I've never heard of that. Rabid Grannies from 88. The time sounds like something I'd be into. Oh, so happy that my Patriots won yesterday. So happy. Trying not to get my hopes all the way up, but yeah, they've had a great season. Very happy with what Mike Vrabel has built in a very, very quick amount of time for him. So yes, very happy. It's a film. Go Pats. So good news is that Jim and I were able to get together and record a new trash movie bonanza for everybody. It's a classic, a real vanity project for its star. I can't wait to share it with everybody. It should be really, really fun. So yeah, there is a new episode coming out. Jamie's working on the edits to that right now, editor Jamie. It'll be a good one, I promise. Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that, and we've got a lot of ideas for the future, including some new comic book stuff. Oh, as long as I'm talking about like sort of trash movie comic book stuff, and Jim, I don't know if you guys saw, this is pretty cool. 1995 movie Tank Girl, right? Live action Tank Girl. It's getting a re-release in 4K by Vinegar Syndrome, who does a lot of great sort of like, they find lost schlock movies and give them a fantastic release. They're releasing Tank Girl, and they hired Jim to do brand new cover art, and it's fantastic. It's really, really good. So I'm so happy for Jim, and who knows, maybe at some point we should talk about that movie. You got to wear the hat I gave you for luck. Go Steelers. I will keep that in mind. Thank you. Thank you. We love making it. I know that like not too many people watch our bad movie review show compared to the other things that we each do, but we both really like talking about some of these movies, and I think that people that watch it are getting a lot of entertainment out of what we're making for you with Trash Movie Bonanza. I'm proud of it. Yeah, Jim has some really cool stuff coming up as we go into this year. Obviously, like, we'll eventually get the Kickstarter that he did this year with Arachnid Enforcer. It's been announced that he's doing the Psy story with Peach Momoko, and he's doing the, what do you call it, the 4K cover of Tank Girl. He's got a bunch of what do you call it, variant covers. I'll leave that for him to announce. But he's got a lot coming out. Oh, well, thank you so much for watching. That means a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We do have a lot of fun with it. Yeah. Wait, I didn't know that it was canceled so that they had like the studio had a choice between the Emoji Movie and Popeye. That I'd never heard. I heard that they turned down Popeye. I've seen the test footage. It looks awesome. Just fantastic. They're not making a new movie. It's a new release. It's a new release of the original movie. But Jim has drawn Tank Girl comics before, so he was a good choice, in my opinion, to do a new cover for it. Because as fun as that movie was, it didn't have the most exciting movie poster. Yeah, the director, Rachel Talalay, has done some of Doctor Who's best episodes in the years since. The movie had like one of the first performances by Naomi Watts. She's incredible. Obviously, Lori Petty making the role her own. Malcolm McDowell, Ice-T. It's a stacked cast. It's schlock, but it's its own thing, man. It's pretty entertaining for what it is. And I'm just like struggling to get my episode of Comic Tropes done. And then I'm going to do, for patrons, I am going to start doing reviews of comics that are way too hard to edit into a YouTube-friendly format. So too hot for YouTube. Going to look at, erotic comics and violent indie outlaw comics exclusively as the Patreon exclusive each month on that. So there's like added incentive. Not only do you get an extra episode, it's now going to be something that I just feel like I can't ever do on YouTube. At least not in a way that would ever allow me to monetize in the first place. So almost why bother? So yeah, I've got some new ideas for what to do with Patreon. I'm excited for that. And when I can carve out a little time, I'm going to make some episodes on how to write for comics that you can like basically purchase for a few bucks at some point on Patreon. And then I'm also going to try to make a comic. April Fool's Trash Movie Bonanza, where Chris and Jim review Rossellini movies with straight faces. I've seen Rubber. It's entertaining for what it is. Saturday the 14th. I remember that one. Well, it's just going to be a link to a video, but the video just won't be monetized. And it'll only be like an occasional thing. But thank you for the heads up. That's kind of you to care. I will be careful that is not what I overall am. I'm just saying that it'll be some stuff that's not monetizable, but it's not going to like just sit there staring at like naked people or something like that. It's just going to be like too hard to like censor a bunch to make it palatable for mass audiences. So I'm not going to bother fighting it. But I don't think Patreon will have an issue with it. Yeah, I saw that it's coming out this summer, I guess. At least I think so. And that's exciting as hell because I'm hopeful. That was one of the best Godzilla movies, no question. Godzilla, like personally, if I'm being honest, it is my absolute favorite. So I hope that the director can catch lightning in a bottle and do it again. But I would think so. I think that there's more you could do with those specific characters. I want to see more of them. I liked those characters, the humans in the last Godzilla movie. I liked them a lot. It's an interesting period in Japan, the rebuilding after World War II. You don't get to see that a whole lot. I think that if they include some other monsters, that there could be a lot of potential for reimagining Hedorah, the smog monster, or Biollante, the genetically put together, alligator rose hybrid. I think that both of those would be really interesting. Yeah, I could do Faust. I am looking forward to Absolute KO boss battle. I think that looks like a lot of fun. Throwing in characters like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Annabelle from the horror movies are just the kind of like ridiculousness that you can really almost only do with a comic book. So yeah. It's just a one shot, so we'll see. It's a lot to accomplish within just one issue, but I do think it looks like a lot of fun. I would love to have a Godzilla -0 to be a great movie that is just as good, if not better than -1. That would be nice. The book Gojira? I mean, I've read some of the comics. I don't know anything about a book. Yeah. I think that like the movies that I like the most in the Godzilla series do tend to have the most well-defined human characters. And I would count the original from 54, like characters like Dr. Sarazawa, who's really interesting. I would count the characters in Shin Godzilla, which was fighting bureaucracy, but like working really hard to like across different disciplines and organizations to solve something together. And I really like the characters in that. The sequel's going to be -0, it's called. It's just called -0. I don't know. I saw a pretty entertaining movie with my friend the other night. I saw it with two friends. I went and saw Primate, that new horror movie where a family that's living with a chimpanzee that Chimpanzee just gets rabies like right away and goes crazy on them. And I was like, here's what I want out of that. I want a monkey going absolutely nuts and ripping people up with its silly monkey strength. And that is exactly what it is. The characters in it are dumb as shit. There's like next to no name actors in it. Like, you're not, but it doesn't slow the pace down. That's what it gives you, what's advertised, and it doesn't slow down. So I was very amused. There are a few people that jumped a few times, which was funny, like in the audience. I mean, I had a good time. I had a real good time. It went ape. That Berserk news is the most welcome news. That is a spectacular character arc. I love Berserk because it starts with such an unlikable main character. It's really hard to get through the first arc in some ways. And the second arc is kind of everybody's favorite, a flashback that explains how he got there. But it means more if you've dealt with Guts being a bit of an asshole at first. And then you understand why he is that way. Because like just about anything bad that could happen to someone has happened to Guts. So the fact that he even continues with life at all on any level becomes heroic. And the fact that he slowly becomes a bit, kinder and more compassionate and eventually like, kind of loving in a lot of ways. I feel like really speaks to his humanity in a beautiful way. So it's a lot to get through. It's a lot of horrible stuff, but it really kind of actually ironically makes me hopeful. I'm like, if this guy can keep going, maybe all of us can. And I know it's fiction, but I love it. I absolutely love it. Oh, man. Yeah, that's the truth. Teague Lawless is terrible, but I love Criminal. That sounds like fun to reread it. Which Godzilla comics do you recommend? James Stokoe did a really good one called The Half Century War. I recommend that. There was recently a Godzilla versus Boston one-shot anthology that had some fantastic stories in it. I'm trying to think of like what else is really good for a Godzilla comic. It depends. If you like love the character, you'll love all sorts of other stuff. There's some old Dark Horse ones that I don't necessarily adore the story, but the artwork by Art Adams on them is like enough to go like, oh, it's still like just to see that art is enough. That's true. Alan Moore does have some Godzilla art out there, and you realize, wow, Alan Moore, quite a good artist. If he decided he wanted to be, an artist more than a writer, he probably would have been successful. Godzilla in Hell is good. Yep. Godzilla versus Phoenix. Oh, Phoenix the City. Got it. For a minute, I thought you meant the Marvel character, and I was like, I think that's happened. I think Jean Grey has gone up against him a little bit. Is there anything else that I've really been... I haven't had a lot of free time to do stuff because I'm editing like crazy on this Jack Kirby episode, which is just taking me so much longer than I ever would have guessed. I gathered so much research and stuff before I started that I thought I had everything I needed. And then you do it and you're like, oh, This really needs some sort of a visual to indicate it. I mean, it's only going to be like a few seconds ultimately, but I just feel like it needs it. And I'm probably realistically spending way too long on it versus what it will get for views. Because, comic book YouTube doesn't get like incredible views, and the amount of time I'm spending on it is, probably not sensible in some ways. But I can't help it. I want to do it right, and I want to do the best I can while I'm doing it. And then I've got all these other ideas that I want to get to, but I gotta finish this one first. I'm trying to think. It's one of the ones that's definitely taken me the longest out of any of the stuff that I've made. Not the longest, but it's one of. And so that's probably silly. It's probably dumb, the amount of time I'm investing in it. Like, people could have done this as an audio podcast and had like, a similar impact for what it will do, but I got to do it the way I think is best. And I think that it needs some of these like really forgotten visuals to indicate what Jack Kirby went through. The Godzilla 70th anniversary is also a good anthology. EJ got to do the cover for that. It looks fantastic. EJ's done a lot of really, really impressive Godzilla stuff. And I'm not just saying that because he's here. I'm saying that because I admire EJ. I admire him a lot. Yeah, Alan Moore can really draw. It's really, really cool. I straight up can't imagine listening to a podcast on an artist. I sort of get that because it's a visual medium, and that's why I do it as a YouTube show. Like, because I had been doing podcasts before I started doing this and so I could have, in a way, just done it as like an interview or a news, like, YouTube show. But to me, it needed to be a YouTube show. I didn't know how popular or unpopular that would be, but to me, it had to be that. But I think a lot of people will still put my episodes on while they're doing other things and primarily listen, and they probably get most of the information. But I really do think I think I load it pretty densely with visual information. It would maybe too much, to be honest. I don't know. I'd be willing to hear that argument if people thought that there was like, too much information expressed visually, but I don't know. It's good to be introspective, but you can't be so introspective that it stops you from doing anything, right? So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm trying to like be aware of what it is and think about it a bit, but also not so much that I just stop. I've been working really hard on the Jack Kirby episode. I think it's one that I'm super proud of. I'm now getting to the point, because I've spent so many hours on it, that I'm getting a little disappointed because I know that it's not really going to get enough views to have justified the amount of hours that I've spent on it, if that's making sense. But whatever. It's just the way I have to do it. I gotta be me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've seen or read lately. I hope that the algorithm loves Kirby. If I made a 7-hour video, it would take me literally like all year. and it would never get enough views to justify the amount of hours that I spent. Yeah. I wish that there was an easy formula to just go like, you should spend this much time editing a video because it'll like, get this ROI on investment. And there probably is in a way a formula you could come up with, but it would sort of break down because you've got to have the artistic inspiration to continue, and that you can't really define, if that makes sense. You can't like just come up with a hard and fast rule for yourself that way. That is a question that I think anybody making, well, I was about to say YouTube videos, but it really could be anything artistic, has to sort of ask themselves at times. But I'm like most comic book people, like the amount of hours that artists spend these days to make comics versus the amount they get paid for them, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't. But you can't help it. You have to do it. Like there's something in you that like has to get a story out. I'm just mostly telling nonfiction stories, but I'm trying to tell a story about the person or about the making of something. I saw that Erik von Daniken passed away, the writer of Chariot of the Gods. Big proponent of the ancient aliens theory. Yeah, I've heard about that before, but I like to give credit to humanity for the things that they've accomplished, which include things like the pyramids and that. Yeah, I think that like we should be very proud of what humanity has created and built and figured out. Just because it happened a long time ago doesn't mean people couldn't figure out math and architecture. Just took longer and had more problem solving. I kind of love humanity for what it's been able to figure out over the years. But I've heard the theory, and I get the appeal, the allure. There's a type of a sense to it all. I like the Eternals. I don't love the Eternals, but only because I can't help but compare it to other things that Jack Kirby did. And it's not my favorite out of like all the things that Jack Kirby did. I mean, even when you limit it to just like the godly themes, I'm like, well, no, like New Gods and Thor and Tales of Asgard would all have to come ahead of Eternals. So he's just sort of the victim of his own success as far as like my ranking of Jack Kirby stuff that goes. Yeah, Jack's just amazing. The older I get, the more I really respect Jack. And I wish I could say differently, but my estimation of Stan Lee, I do still have a lot of affection for Stan Lee, but my estimation of him does go down the more I research comic book history. It's not it's not all negative that I think of, but my estimation of Stan has gone down as I've discovered, more of the things that he either did or just kind of let happen. I don't think he was bad for comics. I think he was quite good for comics in a lot of ways. But I also think that he may have more credit than he's due. And it's hard to say that. It is. But the more I read about, everyone from a big guy like Jack Kirby to, some of the other people that were in the industry, like a Joe Orlando or Steve Manili, and I go, they really added a lot that they didn't get proper credit for. And some of that was just the way the industry was and not knowing where things were going. But it's tough. It's tough to come across like repeated information, just slowly put it together that it's just not a perfect situation. It's tough to read about comics sometimes. All right. That's probably enough. There's a lot of good books in literature about Kirby. I would say among them is the one that Mark Evanier oversaw, because he's got a lot of insight, having been Kirby's production assistant for a number of years. I think that's a pretty important one. Let's see. When I was in Mexico, I had a disagreement with a Mexican woman about aliens. She thought they built the pyramids, and I said it was ancient Mexicans. Her final argument was, why can't we do that now? We definitely can. We definitely can, just to be clear. Tom Scioli's book is pretty nice. I think that his book about Jack Kirby hits a lot of important points in Jack's life. I think that the toughest thing about it is that Jack had a very full life, folks. He really did. And when you try to just do a biography, you can fall into a trap of just like highlight, and there's no connective tissue to show that journey. Which is part of why I can keep coming back and making different Jack Kirby videos here and there. Because I'll go, what if I focused only on his thinking as it relates to religion and how that changes throughout time? Or in this case, how he got sort of erased and redrawn and stuff throughout his career. And you can just sort of follow like a journey. And you're not trying to tell everything all at once. Like, by the way, he was also in the army and was like, literally there in Europe. And, by the way, he pulled himself out of the slums, following the Great Depression. He's got a very interesting story. If they ever made a movie about him, boy, that would be a challenge, because by the time he gets to comics, he ping-pongs back and forth between two publishers for like these 5 to 6, maybe 10-year stints. And he ping-pongs a lot, and he accomplishes interesting things every single time. So how do you tell that narrative in a movie? I'd argue that it might work better to just focus on one aspect of his life and tell that, or a series of movies or a TV show. But I don't think you could really, if you tried to mention everything that Jack Kirby accomplished in his life, including, like his family and his art and his business and his service, and what was happening in the country throughout his whole life, you either be shortchanging something or you just hit highlight, and there's no through line. The Pacific comic years are, overall a smaller sort of period of time, but that and his work at like Topps and his work in the animation industry at the tail end of his career is incredibly interesting. And so I'll probably do something like that at some point, is talk about his creator owned and animation work at some point. Jack Kirby was amazing. He really, really was. And it's sad he did not get, in my opinion, the credit he was due until his later years, at which point he's basically out of comics. He's basically given up on comics for the most part. He's doing a little bit here and there, but he's had it. And it's tough. It's tough. I wish he had at least 10 more years, at least. Anyway, sorry. It's who I've been thinking about a lot lately. I'm going to wrap the show up, I think. I had a good time talking to everybody tonight. Some crazy news, huh? Crazy stuff. $15 million for that Superman comic? That is wild money. And I really hope that AI comics are not something that become normalized and popular going forward. It would radically devalue the artwork of human beings, and it's already been devalued a lot. There will always be an emerging and up-and-coming artist that is willing to do things for less. But long-term, that might hit some low points for the storytelling medium. So definitely a concern. Still, I had fun. I had fun drawing. I had fun talking about the comics that came out. Some good ones for sure. What am I not reading on a regular basis that everybody out there is reading? Even if you're watching this, by the way, once it's on demand, tell me what I'm potentially overlooking that I should be reading, and I will listen to you. Wow, 92. That's nice that he's that made it that long. I know it broke my heart when Tezuka's son made that AI Blackjack comic. I was like, terrible idea. Whatever. We'll see how things go. Folks, nevertheless, treat others kindly. Tell people that you love them, because who knows how many times you'll get to say that to anybody. Engage in your creative pursuits. Make time for yourself, because that is your creative fulfillment. That is good for your mental health. That is good for the world. Sharing something about the human condition through your own storytelling or your own art. Even if your artwork is, say, making a pretty garden, you've beautified your community or your neighborhood, or making good food, you're adding to health and happiness from those around you. Certainly stories share something real about the human condition on a base level. They do. And it's what connects us to each other. It's what we do that makes us special. So make some time for yourself this week to do something creative. Okay. Make a little time for yourself. Say to yourself right now, I'm going to carve out a little bit of time. I'd love to have more, but carve out at least a little extra time to do something creative for yourself. Whatever brings you some pleasure. It'll be worth it. It'll pay off. I promise it'll pay off. Keep reading comics. Take care, everybody. See you real soon. Bye.